I walk into the library and for a moment just stare at the rows and rows of neatly lined up books, color-coded with dots and arranged in alphabetical order with their spines facing outward. Nice of you to finally join us. Now take a seat, Mr. Barnes. My chemistry teacher, Mr. Jacobs, tells me, glancing at the clock. It's 3:30 p.m. and I'll be spending the next hour in after-school detention. I amble over to where 4 other kids are sitting at tables and take a seat beside a girl with purple hair. She lifts her head when she hears me sit down, gives me a dirty look, and then lowers her head again. I debate whether to find a new seat, but the only other one I see is next to Abigail Metzger, and she's a total... You know what, I'm not even gonna say it, but I figure I'll be better off sitting here than next to her. Abigail is the epitome of a mean girl. She's on the cheerleading team and one of the most popular girls in the 12th grade, and she thinks she knows everything about everyone, which causes her to constantly spread gossip and rumors about people. I can't stand her, but tolerate her bullshit only because she's dating my best friend Billy. There are 2 other kids here in detention, besides me, Abigail, and the purple-haired chick, who I'm assuming is a goth girl since she's wearing all black as well as black makeup. One of them I recognize as Gavin Thomas, captain of the wrestling team, which I'm wondering how both he and Abigail ended up with detention in the first place. Usually, the real popular kids like them always find a way of getting out of trouble once they've managed to get into it. Most of the time, their coaches or parents come to their rescue. The other boy I've seen around but don't really know him. I think his name is Chris and he's in my chemistry class, but that's pretty much all I know about him because he always keeps to himself. Just as I toss my backpack to the floor next to me and pull out my world history textbook, Mr. Jacobs clears his throat and gets up from his chair carrying a small plastic bin. I need each and every one of you to place your cell phones into here. They will be returned to you at the conclusion of detention, which will be at 4:30. We all groan, prompting the librarian stationed at the help desk to glare at us and remind us to stay quiet. Then Mr. Jacobs begins to walk around to each table, holding out the bin, and we place our phones into it. After he collects them, he returns to where he was sitting and goes back to reading his newspaper. Mr. Jacobs is fairly new here. He's only been teaching about a year or so. My brother had him for chemistry last year, which was his first year of teaching here at our school. I heard before that he worked at some elite private school out in California. I wonder what brought him all the way out here to some small, unknown high school out in rural Kentucky. I'm sure it can't possibly be the pay. I don't know, maybe he has family or something out here. But no one likes him because he's extremely strict. He's one of those teachers that kids can never get the better of. No matter what witty retort they have, he always has one better. And if you dare disagree with him or talk out of turn, he's quick to hand out detentions, which is how I ended up in here today. Next, I pull out my notebook and pencil from my backpack and open my world history book to the pages that have been assigned to read. The next thing I know, I hear the library door slam closed. I must have dozed off while I was reading. I look up and see that the librarian has left for the day. Then I glance up at the clock on the wall above the help desk. 4 o'clock, 30 minutes to go. As I sit there just staring at the words on the pages of my textbook, Mr. Jacobs gets up from his chair once again and announces, "I have to go retrieve something from my classroom. I'll be right back." Abigail and Gavin sneak a quick glimpse at one another and smile. No one is to leave the library. Is that understood? We all nod our heads in agreement, and then he picks up the bin full of our cell phones and leaves. As soon as he's gone, Abigail gets out of her seat. "Who's ready to have some fun? This is going to be a detention that you'll never forget." The rest of us stare at her but don't respond, and then a moment later Gavin gets up. "Oh, come on, don't be such lames." Then he pulls out a cigarette, lights it, takes a few puffs, and then passes it to Abigail. "Anyone else want one?" The girl with the purple hair raises her hand. "Yeah, I'll take one." Gavin takes one from the pack and tosses it to her. She pulls out a lighter from her pocket and lights it. Then Gavin asks me, "Hey Shane, you want to smoke?" "No man, thanks, but I'm good." "Hey, would you mind holding this for a second? I'll be right back," the goth girl asks me, holding out her cigarette. "Wait, where are you going?" I left my algebra book in my locker. It's just right down the hall. I'm gonna go grab it real quick. But Mr. Jacobs said that no one is allowed to leave. So what? I'll be right back. He'll never even know I was gone unless someone tells him. I take the cigarette from her. Hey, what's your name? Kimberly, but you can call me Kim. I'm Shane. Yeah, I know. We have world history together, she says before walking towards the library doors. As soon as she's gone, Gavin walks over. Where did she go? She had to go get something from her locker. So, are you still coming to my party this weekend? I'm planning on it, but now if my mom finds out I got detention today, she'll never let me leave the house. I'll be stuck doing chores and probably babysitting my little sister while she works all weekend. Okay, so make sure she doesn't find out then. That's easier said than done. You know my mom and Principal Riggs are friends. She's going to find out sooner or later. I'm just hoping that it's later so that I can still come to your party on Saturday. You better hope so. Oh yeah, why's that? Because Brittany Reynolds is supposed to be there, and this will be your chance to finally hang out with her. What? Brittany's coming? I ask all flustered. That's what I heard. Just as I'm about to reply, suddenly the lights go out. Everyone looks around confused. What the hell? Abigail complains. Will you relax? The generator will kick on in another minute, Gavin tells her. But when minutes go by and it doesn't cut on like we all expected, I decide that it's time to get out of here. I put out the cigarette I'm holding and tell the others, look, it's almost 4:30 anyway. I'm sure Mr. Jacobs won't be mad that we left a few minutes early. I mean, come on, the power did just go out. I'm not going anywhere without my phone, Abigail argues. I totally forgot that Mr. Jacobs had even taken them. Alright, so we find him first. By then, it'll be time to leave anyway. They all agree, and we start to pack up our things and then head for the doors. That's when we hear an ear-shattering scream coming from the hall. Immediately, I dart out into the hallway, the others following close behind me. It's pitch black out here. I can't see a damn thing. I creep down the hall, guiding myself and the others by feeling along the lockers. Abigail is right on top of me, gripping onto my backpack tightly. Is anyone there? She shouts, her voice echoing throughout the empty hall. We pause and wait for a response, but get none. What do you think that screaming was? I whisper. Probably just some girl that got scared when the lights went out. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. Now come on, let's get out of here, Gavin replies, pushing his way past the rest of us. Gavin doesn't get too far ahead of us before he trips over something and goes sprawling across the floor. Hey, are you alright? I ask. Yeah, I'm fine, but I slipped and fell in something. It's too dark. We're never going to find our way out of here without a flashlight, I say. Right on cue, a small stream of light floods the hall, and we all turn to look at Chris, who's holding a small keychain in his hand. Really? Why didn't you pull that out earlier? Abigail questions with an attitude, then snatches it from his hand. Sorry, I forgot I had it. Abigail starts to shine the light over in Gavin's direction, but then instantly drops it and lets out a blood-curdling shriek. What's wrong? I question over and over, but after getting no response, I bend down, pick up the flashlight, and point it at Gavin. What in the hell is that? He stutters, his hand shaking as he points over to where I'm standing next to the lockers. Then I shine the flashlight down and see Kim's lifeless body. She looks almost like she's sleeping, until you look at her stomach and see all that blood. Her black jumper is drenched in it, and there are a bunch of tears in the fabric. I turn away as my nostrils fill with the most disturbing odor I've ever smelled, and my stomach heaves. My heart pounds as one question continues to race through my mind. Who would do something like this? I regain my composure and kneel down to check for a pulse. First I check her neck, but when I don't feel one, I check her wrist next. I think she's dead, I whisper. What in the hell is going on? Gavin demands to know, but the three of us just stare at him with shocked and terrified looks on our faces. We're all at a loss for words because we don't have an answer as to what's going on. Oh my God, the police are going to think we killed her. We're the only ones here in the school, Abigail cries. Obviously, it wasn't any of us. We were all in the library together. And how do you know that we're the only ones here? All after-school activities were canceled today. Only detention was still being held. Why was everything canceled? I don't know, but they announced it over the loudspeaker in last period. Look, I don't know what's going on, but we've got to get out of here quick. Obviously, someone else is in here with us, and they're clearly psycho, Chris says with a look of fear on his face. I reach out my hand and help Gavin up. Then we huddle together and make our way downstairs to the first floor so that we can get out of here. But every single entrance and exit we come across is locked, leaving us no way out. We're trapped in here, aren't we? Abigail asks. No, we'll find a way out. First, we just have to find Mr. Jacobs. He's got to still be here. I'm sure he has the keys. We have to warn him about what's going on, and he has our phones. So once we find him, then we can call for help. Well, what if he's already dead, like Kim? Gavin asks. We can't worry about that now. We have to at least try to find him. So next we head back up to the second floor, where Mr. Jacobs' classroom is located. Mr. Jacobs? Mr. Jacobs, are you down there? Wait, what if the killer is down there too? They'll hear you, Abigail whispers. Good point. I didn't even think about that. We'll just have to search without calling for him. I don't know what's wrong with me. It feels like since my adrenaline started pumping, I've lost all common sense. Nothing but silence lurks throughout the halls. Gavin is walking next to me now, and the smell of Kim's blood all over him is making me want to gag. As we creep down the hall, getting closer and closer to Mr. Jacobs' classroom, the sound of a phone ringing comes from the opposite end. We freeze, unsure of which way to go. We should split up, Gavin suggests. That's a terrible idea, Abigail says. Yeah, I agree with her. I think we should definitely stay together. Fine, since the three of you want to stick together, then you go look for Mr. Jacobs, and I'll go see where that ringing is coming from. Then he sprints away down the dark hallway before anyone else can object. Just as he disappears into the darkness, the ringing stops. Gavin, I whisper loudly. Come on, if something happens to him, it's his own fault. He never should have left the group, Abigail tells me, pulling me along down the hall. I tug my arm away. Wait, where did Chris go? I don't know, maybe he went with Gavin. Well, did you see him leave? No, but yeah, I didn't either. Chris, where are you? I walk into the bathroom, which we just so happen to be walking past, thinking that maybe he ducked in there to go take a quick leak. Chris is a really quiet kid, so I wouldn't expect him to say anything before he left. Chris, I call out again. I kneel down and look to see if any of the stalls are occupied, but they're all empty. Shane, we need to hurry up and find Mr. Jacobs. What if he goes back up to the library and sees that we're gone, and then he leaves for the night? All right, let's go. We march down the hall and stop at room 223. The door is closed, so I reach for the knob and twist it, only to find that it's locked. I think you may be right. Come on, let's head back up to the library and try to catch him before he leaves. We race back down the hall, and just as we make it to the stairs, we hear a thunderous crash come from the floor above us. Abigail and I both stop and stare at each other. What was that? She asks. I don't know. We climb the stairs, race down the hall, and by the time we make it to the library, we're both out of breath. We head inside, expecting to come across Mr. Jacobs searching for us, but when we enter, the library is still empty. Abigail walks over to the nearest window and stares out into the parking lot. His car is still here. Okay, so where else do you think he could be? I don't know, maybe the teacher's lounge? Alright, so we'll check there next. But first, I think we should go back down to the second floor and find Gavin. Nah, I don't think so. I don't think we should waste any time looking for him when he's not capable of doing anything to help us get out of here. Well, when you put it like that, I think to myself. Just as we're turning to leave, I swear I hear something. I turn and start to walk toward the back of the library because that's where I heard the sound coming from. I can't say distinctly what it was that I heard, but it sounded like someone else was in here. "Where are you going?" Abigail questions. "Did you hear something?" "Nothing besides that loud crash when we were downstairs." I motion for her to stay quiet and follow me. Then we begin to tiptoe toward the back of the library. As we pass by the librarian's desk, Abigail grabs a stapler. "What do you plan on doing with that?" She shrugs her shoulders. "It's better than having nothing to fight with at all." I guess she's right, so just to be safe, I turn around and take a pair of scissors from the desk. Then we proceed to head toward where the sound came from. When we get to the back of the library, I see that one of the shelves has collapsed. "That must have been what we heard," Abigail says. "No, I heard something else," I say as I begin to pace back and forth. Then I hear it again, and this time I know for certain exactly what it is. A muffled moan. I tell Abigail to help me move some more of the books, and then after throwing about 50 of them aside, we discover Gavin. He's barely able to speak, but he manages to point down at his leg, which is being crushed by the massive bookshelf. "Help me try to lift it," I tell Abigail. We try again and again with all of our strength, but the thing doesn't even budge. "What happened? Did someone do this to you?" I ask him. He nods his head. "Who? Was it Chris?" He shakes his head no and tries to say something, but I can't quite make it out. "Look, we're gonna go find some help so that we can get this off of you. We'll be right back." He grabs my arm, and I can see it in his eyes that he's begging me not to leave him alone. Then suddenly, a stack of books fall to the floor from one of the nearby aisles, scaring us half to death. Abigail shines the flashlight in that direction and holds the stapler high in the air, prepared to strike. "Who's there?" I get up, grab the flashlight from her, and take a few steps toward the aisle. "Chris, is that you?" "Are you crazy? Don't go over there," Abigail warns. I grip the scissors tightly and take another step. "Shane, come back here." But I ignore her and keep going, creeping closer inch by inch until I make it to the aisle, turn, and then start to walk down it. I see the pile of books lying in a heap on the floor, but other than that, it's completely empty. I turn around and start heading back to where Abigail and Gavin are when I hear something right behind me. I spin around, and the next thing I know, I hear a squish sound, then feel a warm sensation as my left hand soaks with something wet. I let go of the scissors, but they're stuck in something. As I raise the flashlight, I realize that they're actually protruding from someone. I look up and come face to face with Chris. He's staring me right in the eye with a look of confusion. I grab a hold of his shoulders, trying to hold him up. "I'm sorry, I thought—" "Did you find anything?" Abigail asks. But I'm too stunned to reply, so after she doesn't get a response from me, she comes over to see what's going on. She sees Chris slumped over in my arms, and then the scissors sticking out of his stomach. "Oh my God, Shane, what happened? What did you do?" I didn't know it was him. He scared me. It was an accident." I try to sit him down and lean him up against the bookshelf, but he immediately slumps back over. "Is he dead?" Abigail asks, now starting to cry. "I don't know." "Well, check." I reach for his wrist, but then instantly pull away when I notice the blank look in his eyes. He's staring right at me, and although he hasn't actually said anything, it feels like he's trying to ask, "Why? Why did you do this to me?" Wanting to clean the blood off of me, I tell her, "I have to go to the bathroom." "Well, I'm not staying here alone," she says, grabbing a hold of my arm. Just as we get up to leave, a scream echoes throughout the library, tearing through me like a giant shard of glass. Abigail grips me so tight, the blood in my arm stops flowing. I feel my eyes widen, my pulse quicken, my heart thudding out of my chest, and the blood draining from my face. My feet refuse to move, until I hear the same scream once again. That causes my legs to finally make the conscious decision to get moving. We walk down the aisle and turn right, heading to the back of the library where we left Gavin. Once we reach him, Abigail collapses to the ground. "This is all my fault. I never should have left him." I have to turn away because the sight is just too much for me. There are two pencils jabbed straight through the center of both pupils, and the look frozen on his face is one of pure terror. I grab Abigail by the hand. Come on, let's get out of here. Tears are streaming from her eyes so fast, I don't know how she can even see to run. We race through the library towards the doors, and just as we approach them, Mr. Jacobs steps out of the shadows and stands right in front of them, blocking our exit. Thank God we found you, sir. Kim, Gavin, and Chris are all dead. Someone killed them. We need to get out of here. It's not safe. And we need our phones back so we can call the cops, Abigail adds. He stands there silent for a few seconds, like he's trying to comprehend everything that we just told him. Then suddenly, a smirk spreads across his face so wide, and I catch a glimpse of something gleaming at his side, revealing his clear motive. He's the one responsible for all of this. And the way he's looking at Abigail and me right now, it's clear that he wants nothing more than to kill us next. Where's the stapler? I whisper to her. I don't know. I must have dropped it when we were back there. Great, I think to myself. Since we have nothing to fight with, I compromise and do the next best thing. I dart toward him and tackle him to the ground, knocking the knife from his hand. Run! I shout to Abigail. She starts to dash toward the doors, but then turns around and grabs the knife from the floor. Aren't you coming? I'll be right behind you. Just before I can finish my sentence, Mr. Jacobs manages to get his hands around my neck and starts choking me to the point that I can't even breathe. My vision starts to blur as I dig at his fingers, attempting to pry them loose. And once I free myself from his grasp, I punch him in the nose and blood spurts all over, not making any difference to me since I'm already covered in Chris's anyway. I raise my fist to strike him again and notice blood covering 4 of my knuckles. Then I lower it, smashing it into his nose again and again. What is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? They never did anything to you. Why'd you have to go and kill them? As he lies there taking my beating and listening to my questioning, he grins, the blood leaking from his nose into his mouth, making him look even more like a maniac. Then he begins to laugh, a hysterical type of laughter that angers me even more. I get up and scream at him, "You're crazy!" Then start heading toward the doors to go find Abigail. But he gets up too, and as soon as my back is turned, I hear the click of a gun hammer, and then a second later, a bullet flies past me and hits the door. You're not going anywhere. He takes a seat at one of the tables and asks, Do you happen to know a teacher that used to work here by the name of Mrs. Jacobs? I shake my head no. I mean, the name sounds familiar, but Jacobs is a pretty common last name. Is she your wife? He lowers the gun. No, my mother. She was real strict, just like me, and all of the kids hated her. But there was this one group of them that pushed her buttons more than all the others, and it caused her to have a heart attack. She had to retire. Her life was never the same after that. She became so depressed that she couldn't do what she loved anymore. She ended up committing suicide a year later. I'm sorry, is the only thing I can think of to say. But I don't think he wants my sympathy. Teaching meant the world to her. Why couldn't those kids see that all she was trying to do was help them? But what does that have to do with us? We had nothing to do with what happened to her. We weren't even in high school when she was teaching here. You may not have been, but I chose each of you for a reason. The 5 of you all have older siblings. I think about it for a second. Yeah, I have 2 older brothers, and I know Gavin has an older brother as well. And I think Abigail has an older sister and brother. But I don't know Kim or Chris well enough to know if they do. What do they have to do with any of this? Don't you understand? They're the cause of all of it. They were the ones who killed my mother, and now you must pay the price. Suddenly, he gets up, points the gun at me again, and then fires, shooting me in the arm, and I fall to the floor. As I grip the door handle and try to pull myself back up, I turn to see what he's doing now, and that's when I see blood seeping from his button-up shirt, and the look of surprise in his eyes. A moment later, when his body drops, I'm shocked to see Abigail standing behind him, with the knife that's now covered in his blood still in her hand. She's shaking so badly she drops it, and I rush forward to pick it up, not knowing if Mr. Jacobs is still alive. I get to her just as she collapses and falls into my arms. "You saved my life," I tell her. "You would have done the same for me." I let her go and cautiously approach Mr. Jacobs' body, clenching the knife in my hand. "He's dead," I say as I search his pockets for the keys. I find them, take the gun, and then help Abigail up, and we head down to the front entrance of the school. It takes me a while to find which key unlocks the door, but once I do, we burst through it and don't stop running. The whole time I'm thinking back to something that Abigail said earlier when we were in detention. This will be a detention that you never forget. And she was right. This will be a detention that I never forget. Don't forget to subscribe for new stories weekly. See you next time on
Nina's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.